Thank you all. Listen, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce the speaker, and this speaker goes back a long way in my early recovery. And my first day meeting this person, I was begging for some kind of service work, and he's always done service work. I'm always begging this man, can you help us out? Can you do this? And you know what? He always steps up to the plate. He's never turned me down. You know, with his little history things and this and that. Matter of fact, he was at the Men's Recovery Conference with Narcotics Anonymous, was 60 years old, and did a real nice presentation for the men at the conference, and it blew a lot of people away. But anyway, I could go on about him, but I'm not going to do that. And I know he's of service. I know he does recovery, and you never know as far as Narcotics Anonymous goes as to where you're going to see him. And he's all in a bag of chips to me. But anyway, here he is, Kevin from Back to Basics. Kevin, come on up.
I probably don't need this, but I do need this, which is an alarm set, just to make sure I don't forget. They told me when I got clean, you see a speaker without a watch, get nervous, You might be in for a ride, But I'm an addict. My name's Kevin. And I'm really, really glad to be here, really humbled and grateful for the men's conference and Phil to ask me to come and share, a little bit about my recovery. The first thing I just want to do is, again, acknowledge the hard work that you all did, Lau and Phil, the group. There's Kyle and Lau. There's a couple other, Andrew, but I think we need to give those guys another round of applause. This is a fantastic event, and it's one that I wish I could get to in a greater way. That could have been here all day, or even more frequently. I got kids that play sports, and in the fall, it's really, really, it's a blessing to have that in my life, but it's also something that gives me some limits. So I'm really glad I was able to be here tonight. I almost had to bring my 8-year-old with me, and I would have gladly done that. He's a little NA kid, and he'd be glad to be here. He'd be running around and trying to help out in the kitchen. I was glad to be able to hear a couple speakers. I came in when Rich shared, and listening to him and Kevin talk. Just a few things hit me. I remember being here a couple years ago, and I wasn't able to stick around. A guy I sponsor has a bonfire, and every year it falls on the same Saturday as this. So everyone's invited to John's bonfire. It's his home group. They have it at this farm out in Peters Township. But I didn't stick around that year. But I was so thrilled to hear what happened. How there were 17 people at the end that night. Because we were celebrating the history, 60 years of Narcotics Anonymous that day, and I do. I'm a fan of NA history. I really do enjoy learning about it, reading about it. I rather talk about that because then I don't have to talk about me and my shit, and get honest and have to talk about my defects of character or whatever I talk about, It is an honor. It's a high honor. Whenever I got asked to do this, I called my sponsor immediately. And I said, you're never going to believe this. And I said, I'm speaking at the Men's History Conference. I said, Phil said I'm the Banquet Speaker. and my sponsor, he speaks all over the world, I remember one time I was sharing at the Laurel Mountain Highlands Retreat, and he was sharing that same weekend in Russia or Norway or some shit, And so he said that is an honor, because he knows what this is about. He's been to this before. I kind of have two different reactions, when Phil called me. The first one, was, oh my God, I don't really have nothing to say. You know what I mean? I'm not, when I think of the men's conference, And, the couple times I've been here, I hear really, really powerful messages. People get honest at this podium. We talk about, I wasn't here to be able to be here all day, but I'm sure you heard something if you were here all day that you connected with. Now, that made you go nod your head or made you go, ooh, I can't believe he's going to talk about that and they're taping him, So part of me was just like kind of, taking in this idea that ain't me, man. I don't really have that much to offer. I'm just a guy, I've been clean a little bit, but I'm not particularly inspirational, I don't think. I don't think I'm particularly funny or smart. I'm just an addict, That's really not at my level, I'm not a banquet speaker. I could talk about banquets. I got some banquets. And that was an excellent banquet we had here, by the way, I'm not trying to make any trouble, but this was if I had a match, I was telling Nate and then Lyle, I like this dinner better than the Start to Live convention. I spent a lot more money for that dinner, But then there's another side of me because, our disease has two sort of ends to it. I was like, it's about goddamn time someone asked me to be a banquet speaker. You're damn right I'm the closer. What took so long? It's 15 years and you're just asking me now, And that's the way that my brain's wired. And that's, Kevin talked about that isolation. And honestly, I really believe that that's just so much a part of, embedded and hardwired into who I am. That when I was using, and before I found, the freedom from active addiction that Narcotics Anonymous has offered me, that's how I lived. I'm too good to be here. I'm better than over there, I'm looking down my nose at you while I'm trying to get in your pocket to get some of what you got, That's the way my disease works, and I'm just grateful that I'm clean. Narcotics Anonymous has worked for me. It's worked for me. There's a lot of discussions I hear. These days, us addicts, we're getting a lot of attention, on the news every day, Everybody's trying to help us. Everybody's got some different answer for us, right? You got people that are this and congressmen and this and a new kind of offices opening up and new kind of this. And, we're really on the front page these days, right? All I know from my own experience is what I could share. And that is that Narcotics Anonymous has worked for me. Now, I ain't putting any other form of help down. If you're getting help and this is coming from some other way, get it, a friend of mine is in my head, probably a lot of people say it, but he always says, you can't argue with success. So if you're clean and you're living right, whatever you're doing, do it. But Narcotics Anonymous has worked for me. It's worked for me when other things didn't. And I tried the different things, that the readings talk about. Many of us sought help through medicine, religion, psychiatry. We don't say that those don't work at all. None of those methods was sufficient for us, right? We probably benefit from a little bit of those too, right? They weren't sufficient for us. This is what's worked for me. By the time I surrendered, I've been clean since, January the 7th of 1990 is my first day clean. It's my anniversary. And I've been, just so blessed to be clean and stay clean. I will tell you that, my clean time and my recovery do not equal each other. Okay? There's been plenty of time in this span of, some 27 years and some odd months where I was not practicing the principles in all my affairs. I remember hearing that, and just a little sidebar, I got here when I was young, I was 18, and when I hear practicing all our affairs, I thought, man, I'm going to get older and get a wife and cheat on her. I always thought that meant that, practicing all our affairs. I always just thought that's what that meant. But I haven't always followed the path that has been laid out for me here. I was thinking back in 2003 when this thing started. I was enmeshed in the period of my recovery that I fondly, or not so fondly call the drive-by years. now, because there was a stretch of this journey where, I didn't go to meetings regularly. I went to meetings irregularly. And what I mean by that? I'd have a home group I'd get to when I could, then I'd skip it, then I'd get a different home group. And, I don't believe that there's been a whole month of my life since 1990 that I haven't been to a meeting. But there might have been months where I only went to one meeting, and I'm telling you right now that that's not how I roll today. That's not what I need in my life today. This journey's it's just been an incredible journey. It's been an incredible journey, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed in so many ways, and yet at the same time, like sometimes I get ungrateful and I take for granted on what this is, what this Narcotics Anonymous program has offered me. And I get stuck. So I have a Narcotics Anonymous home group. We just started it last week. So my week started out, it was kind of crazy, running around doing different things. In addition to being a recovering addict, I'm a father. It's a job I take real seriously. It's a job that I have that works a whole lot better for the other people that live in my house whenever I'm practicing this program. When I think about the men's conference and men's, speaking to guys, and I admire so many guys in this program that when I got clean, as I got here and then as I stayed here, my perceptions changed about what I thought a man was. I remember watching people when I got clean that were slick and hip and looked like they had money and they had the girls. I remember going to the dances down, at the Sahara Club. Friday night we'd be down in the Al Club, Saturday night Sahara Club. Then they opened that place in Homestead, we go down there. And the guys that had game, right, had the different girls and whatnot. And I didn't feel like I had all that, My perception about what it meant to be a man was really skewed growing up. I had loving parents, but my father was handicapped. And I always walked around feeling some kind of way about that, where I'd see, my friends with their dads coaching the ball with them and doing different things. I didn't have that. And I felt, there was all those things that early on in life, I just didn't feel right about myself. And I can't explain it. And I really gave up a long, long time ago trying to figure out the why. Why am I an addict? Why do I have this disease of addiction? It's really of no interest to me, at this point. I know that I am. I know that I am, and more importantly, I know what to do about it. So when I look back now, the messages that I had when I got here were really off. And when the first guys asked to be my sponsor, I asked him to be my sponsor because he had a fast car and shuffled the girls around, And like I said, I grew up in a situation where I didn't really, I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't really understand about being a man. I didn't understand about, and I was just lost. I was just lost. And so I just kept coming back. And really, like I said, I get up here now and at this meeting, and like, I don't know, man, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm standing up here sharing at this conference, and it's the end of the day. Some of you guys have been here all day are troopers, man. I don't know how many people made it all day, but this is the final meeting. So, silence. That's powerful, man. Like I said, there's two sides of me. The side of me to get up here and think like, I ain't got nothing to say. I ain't got nothing anybody wants to hear. And then the other side of me feels like, why does it take so long? And the truth is, this disease addiction that I suffer from didn't go away when I stopped using drugs. It's with me today. It followed me around a long time in this program. I go through a day like today where I start out running around, going to a meeting that was my home group, and then go watch my daughter play some soccer, run back home, do some things with my son play his soccer game, go pick up a couple guys, and get here. And it's just sometimes I run and run and run, and I don't stop long enough to just take in the moment, you know. I was actually going to leave my son's soccer game, and one of the dudes was come with me. He's like, Kevin, just slow down. Enjoy your kid's game. We'll get to the thing. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. And I forget that, you know, sometimes just those simple things. You know, the theme of this thing is unity, you know. Unity changes us. And when I got here, you know, tonight, and I come in the room, I see everybody smiling, everybody laughing, you know, people having a good time. And that's just not how sometimes, even to this day, I feel inside. You know, sometimes I struggle with time clean. And I went through, like I mentioned earlier, you know, I went through a period of my recovery where I call it the drive-by years, where I felt so disconnected. And I would show up. And I remember, you know, if you've been around a little bit of time and you have ever gone through a spell like that, what happens is, you know, someone says, oh, you're getting a key tag. Oh, are you a speaker? Like that would be the only time that you would see me, you know? And I felt and I found myself in a place feeling very lonely and very isolated in my recovery. You know, so much so I had 20 years clean. When I had 20 years clean, I celebrated 20 years with my whole we, all three of them. You know, there's a couple guys that like I still kept in touch with. One guy to this day, his name's Bob W. And I questioned I questioned the authenticity of his recovery because he had me as a sponsor back then, you know. Like I look back like, man, you was pretty sick if you had me as a sponsor trying to get clean. Because I didn't feel like, you know, I wasn't working a program. And what happened to me in that period of time was much different than how I live today. You know, I could stand in for you and say, you know, I got 3 kids. I have a 22, almost 23-year-old stepson who I've been with since he was 2. I got a 15-year-old daughter. You know, I got an 8-year-old son. And they've never seen me high, right? I would love to be able to stand up here and say they've never seen me put my fist through a door, but that's not true. I'd love to be able to stand up here and say that they've never seen me have their mother in tears by, you know, the sharpness of my words to her and the disrespect that at times that I reflected to her. You know, I can't say that. I can't say that, you know. And for me, I got to a place in my recovery where here I am clean, but I'm sick as a motherfucker, man. I'm sick as hell. And I'm asking myself, what am I really about? But, you know, I don't know if you've been in this spot or not. When I get committed to being, like, right, I don't even want to hear it. I don't even know what the other side of the story. You know, I get so self-centered, you know, because that's what this disease is about. See, when I got here, I thought I had a drug problem. I thought I had a stealing problem. I thought I had a, you know, I don't have enough problem. Give me more, you know, and I thought I was slick because, you know, I got away with a lot of stuff. You know, I mean, I was blessed or cursed or whatever with being able to slide through a lot of things without getting in trouble. But, you know, but what I realize now is that I've got this disease of self-centeredness. I've got this, like Kev talked about before, this disease of isolation. And I stood, you know, I faced a crossroads in my recovery a little over 7 years ago. And I didn't realize how hurt and how damaged I was even in this process. You know, because I'll tell you, you stick around here, you can accumulate some things. You know, I remember one time they asked me to speak at a Start to Live fundraiser up in Beaver County. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And they're probably going to pick me to be the main speaker after they hear my message, you know. And they didn't. You know, they didn't. But I shared because that particular week, I got accepted to go back to school to become a principal. You know, I work in the school system. And I was like, damn, I can't believe that shit. You know what I mean? Like, I was real torn because part of me felt like, you know, wow, you worked hard, you earned this. Another part of me just felt like I didn't belong there, you know. And that was about the time that I started drifting away. You know, I started, like, getting too full of myself. You know, I started believing that, you know, we talk, and I heard it for years and years and years, social acceptability does not equal recovery. You know, problems of money, property, prestige divert us from our primary purpose. It wasn't like you didn't warn me, you know, but I got all caught up in those things. And so that began a period of my life where I didn't want to be seen at meetings. I thought I was somebody that, like, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what I thought was going to happen if I got found out, but I was sure that I didn't want to get found out, you know. And what I know about it now is that had a lot to do with my insecurities, you know, that I didn't know how to live in that world and live in this skin, to interact with people that aren't addicts, and to be, put in a position of responsibility when I'm such an irresponsible person. You know what I mean? Like, talk about a fish out of water. I mean, they give me keys to a place and give me some authority, and I ain't working a good program. It's bad for other people, you know? Bad for other people, you know? An addict, you know, full of himself like that. And I lived like that for a few years, you know? And what happened to me was that there was a turning point that now I look back, and it was like, honestly, you know, I must feel like I have a little over 7 years clean. Like I've had a rebirth in this process 7 years ago. Because my disease and my sickness, not the drugs, not the using, but my sickness, had backed me into a corner that the text talks about sometimes we don't come out of clean. And it was a night that I'll never forget. You know, it was a Saturday night, much like tonight. But instead of hanging out with addicts, instead of being on my way to a bonfire at a guy's sponsor's house with a bunch of other people, and lovely ladies too, by the way, you know, with the yoga pants up. You know, instead of that, I was doing something that I had made a routine. I was playing cards with guys, you know, within my family structure that I married into. And they're drinking liquor and beers, and I'm there, and that became like a thing for me. You know, I wasn't doing this. I wasn't at a men's conference, right? But I was doing that back in them days. And some things happened, you know, And you know, the one dude, you know, who's in part of my family, said some things. I didn't like it. And next thing you know, I'm posturing up on him. And listen, you know, part of why I felt so inferior coming into Narcotics Anonymous, and part of why I walked into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous with issues, you know, I didn't you know, embody what I believed to be a real man, a hard ass, someone that had, you know, a lot of money or could get a lot of money, someone that had all the girls, someone that could beat someone's ass down hard. And, you know, there's dudes like that I grew up with, and I was like, I wanted to be their friend. I did not want to get on their bad side because I would have never made it in jail. Thank God I never got caught to the point where I had to go away because I'm soft, man. I'm not going to play and act like I'm not. I am. It would be hard on me in jail. I know this. I mean, I go into an H&I meeting and I'm a bigger dude, so I can kind of walk in, you know. And inside I'm like, I'm so glad I'm leaving tonight. You know, and I go, if I did H&I in a state prison for I did SCI Green, or SCI Windsor for like 5 years. Then went out to SCI Greensburg. And those dudes got, you know, and I'm walking in there, but I'm like, man, shit, get me out of here. You know? I'm not going to front, man. You know, I'm not hard. But sometimes, you know, just like our defects of character don't always follow logic, right? And so that particular night, that 7 years ago, part of me thought that I was that guy, you know. And so I post up on this dude and tell him all about himself and what I'm going to do and call him out and let's throw this down, motherfucker, I'm like, this and that. And my kid was 15 at the time, 14, 15 years old, Cody was, and I said, come on, we're leaving. He's crying. I said, I ain't going with you. I'm like, yes, you are. The car you're going. So he goes, walking away crying, and I walk away, and I'm saying my last things as I'm walking around the corner. And make this big exit. Tell him how lucky he was I was leaving, you know. And I get around the front and I get in my car. And I look up. And his car was blocking me in. So I had to go around and ask him to move his car around. You know, like I said, I ain't got that kind of game, man. That's not me. Like, you know, should I ram his car? I'm not going to ram his car. I can't do that, you know. But that's how I was living with over 20 years clean, I'm telling you. When was the last time I had prayed on my knees? I couldn't tell you. What was my home group at those days? I didn't have one. How often was I calling my sponsor? I don't know. You know, I didn't do those things. I stopped doing those things that got me, you know, all the confidence stuff, the good things in my life came to me because of those. But slowly I had abandoned those things, and I find myself living in a process where I'm sick, I'm crazy, I'm isolated. You know, I couldn't relate more to Kevin. He's talking about that isolation. And I think I'm somebody, but I feel like nobody, you know. And so my sponsor, the next day, and that ended, and the next day I called my sponsor. And, you know, it was like big news in the family that I made this big scene at my sister-in-law's house, and my wife was mad. And I was used to that because I was, like I said, I was doing crazy shit, you know, yelling and screaming like a maniac, and clean. You know, the book talks about this as disease is physical, mental, and spiritual. You know, and the physical part is the drugs. The drugs was gone. You know, the mental part is that obsession. The spiritual part is that self-obsession. And I was so caught up in the mental and the physical part of the disease. And guess what was right around the corner? Would have been the drugs. You know, my sponsor told me after that, you know, at some point, he was worried about me. And like, I was so caught up in my own shit that I didn't see it. I didn't realize how bad of a situation I was in. So anyway, the next day I called him up, and he gives me this. You know, my sponsor's Steve. You know, Steve. He gives out the magic. That's Steve. You know, and he says, I told him all about what happened, and he says, well, you know, you got to make amends to that guy. Make amends to him? Fucking crazy? Didn't you hear what I just told you about him? What asshole? And he for the first time, you know, and I could hear his voice in my head, Kevin. He never postured up on me, but he did that day. And he said, you know, you can't just pick and choose the parts of Narcotics Anonymous that you want to apply in your life if you want this. You know, if you want to keep this, if you want to have this way of life, you got to do the things you don't want to do. And it was like a moment in time that has stuck with me. It changed my life. That moment, I'm sitting in a parking lot of Washington, right over by the Outback, and I'm sitting in my car, and he was right. I didn't want to hear it, but he got through to me, and I immediately called that dude, and I made that amends, and told him I was wrong for what I did, and it wouldn't happen again. And instantly, something happened. Something changed for me. I mean, I can't, you know, I wouldn't like hearing angels in my head or anything, but something happened. And that occurred right about the same time that the guy who's having the bonfire tonight had asked me to sponsor him. And I remember him asking me to sponsor him. I thought, I got nothing to give. Why is he asking me to be his sponsor? You know, like, but I mean, I had a front. I'm like, yeah, of course he wants me to be his sponsor. I got all this time clean and I'm this and that in my own head. And so it was a rebirth for me, you know, and that was like, and you know, it was like August 29th or something like that, 2010. And, you know, everything in my life has gotten better since that day. You know, the last 7 years have meant more to me than the 20 before them, you know, in terms of my spirituality. I mean, I needed to have a base. I had something to work with, you know. Thank God I didn't use. So many of us do. And I do not, for 1 second, take credit for not getting high through those years. I don't know how, honestly, I don't know how I didn't. You know, I don't know how I didn't. But I didn't. And, you know, there's been, you know, great struggles, and there's been great victories in this last 7 years. You know, I mentioned my stepson, and, you know, we've had some rough times, him and I. You know, we're a lot alike. You know, when I think about, you know, the kind of things I thought was a real man when I got here to Narcotics Anonymous, and I felt like I wasn't, you know, he is those things, you know. He is a hard ass. He's boxing, and he's real athletic, and he's, you know, he could get more girls, honestly. With my brain and what he's working with, I could get a lot more girls than he does. I'm telling you that. You know, he's pretty, but we had a lot of rough times, me and him. And, you know, there was a lot of pain, and there still is a lot of pain. You know, he went through this process where, you know, his dad left him when he was little. He wasn't really in his life, and he wasn't really feeling me. I mean, he was for a period of time, then he wasn't. And then, you know, there was like the perfect storm, you know. He's coming into that part of his life where he needs structure and he needs love, but guidance at the same time, like a young man needs. And I'm full of defects of character and shortcomings. And those two things didn't really mesh too well. And it put us in a situation where we really were at odds for many years, up until really about 6 months ago. I hated him. You know, he hated me. I felt anger much of the time, and I couldn't get past my own issues to really see what was going on. I was so full of self-obsession, and I wanted to project and blame everything outside of me, you know. And it sounds real familiar because that's what we do when we're using, right? And so, you know, I don't even know why I'm going down this path, but I'm just sharing, you know, and it's back and forth, you know, and we went through some rough times. And it was about 6 months ago, I found myself in an emergency room with him, his mother, you know, standing over top of him, and he wanted to die. And he was suffering. He was suffering. And spiritually, mentally, physically, much like we suffer, you know. And it was like the first time in many years that all the hate went away, man. You know, all the hate went away, and I felt nothing but love and compassion for him. You know, it had never occurred to me through all the anger that I had that maybe he had a problem, you know. I mean, I look at you, I could go up and hug a newcomer, welcome, you know. I go into a jail, a detox, people come in off the halfway house to a meeting, I'm right there, you know. But someone struggling right into my own nose, and I was so consumed with my own, you know, my own stuff that I really wasn't able to. And so that changed things 6 months ago, you know, and him and I are in a much, much better place, and there's a whole lot more to it, but I ain't going to tell his story. One day he might tell it from up here, you know. Now, I don't know, like I said, I don't know why I was picked to do this, you know. Like I said, I felt very, very inadequate, honestly, Phil, and that's just that part of me. I struggle. That disease has got two sides to it. You know, I'm too good, I'm not good enough. But I was meant to share. It was my turn, you know. And then I got asked this week to speak at that men's rap, and I'm like, that's fucked up, man. You know, oh, look at this guy, you know. No, man, I don't want to be doing that shit, you know, because that's, you know, I got a convention. I like to just chill. I don't want to have to think about anything, you know. I want to just chill. But in order to do that, I've got to give it away. You know, there's a responsibility here. You know, there was a guy named John who I believe has passed away since. But on a cold night in January in 1990, he got up out of his warm house and came and took this addict to a meeting. You know, he thought enough to do that. His gratitude, his whatever it was, lined everything up. And that brought me to my first meeting. I got a key tag, and I've been clean ever since. And so I'm so grateful. What if that guy wouldn't have done it that night? What if he wouldn't answer his phone? What if he wouldn't have got in the car and come and got me? You know what time is the best time to help us when we're struggling is that second that we ask for the help. We don't stick around, a lot of us, you know what I mean? We change our mind, you know. Another call comes in, or you see your boy, whatever, and back off for another go-round, you know. And I got that help, so I feel that is a responsibility I have, you know, and I try to do it the best of my ability. Listen, man, I haven't done anything perfect here at all in the time that I've been clean, except not take that first one. And I already told you all that there was a stretch. That wasn't me. That was God carrying me when I wasn't able to, you know, to carry myself. But I'm happy, you know, I'm happy to be, you know, to be clean today. I'm happy to have the life that I have. You know, I'm very honored, you know, to be, and I feel very blessed to have the family that I have. You know, I talked about my stepson, but, you know, I got a beautiful daughter. who's, she just went from like a 3-year-old Disney princess to this high school girl that's got dudes coming over to the house and wanting to be around and all that. And that is messed up, man. I'm like, well, how did that happen? And I don't know if I'm ready for it, but it's happening. Ready or not, it's, she's wearing a dress with homecoming dance, whatever. And these little dudes, and like the one little dude last year, he come around and I didn't like him, man. He wouldn't look at me in my face. He wanted to come in. Hey, we're going to go downstairs. No. He has to go. There's no going downstairs. I know what happens downstairs. This little dude now, he looks at me, shakes my hand, calls me Mr. Rice. He comes from a house where they punish him, where they, give him a grounding, so whatever. Like maybe that means something, And then I got my little dude, and I cheated myself really, and I cheated my older kids. They didn't know a lot about this. Cody was probably 14 years old before he knew I was an addict. And someone in our family had gotten in trouble, and I got involved in helping get them into treatment. And he was like, well, how do you know so much about this? And I told him, and he was like, he didn't believe me, And then he got around my family, his aunts and uncles, and they were and then they'd start telling stories, and then he believed me, And my daughter wasn't really around too much, but my little, and my sponsor shared my podium at my old home group a few years ago, and he said, if we believe that there's some connection to this genetically, then that means that chances are my kids could have this thing, And why would I keep them from the answer? I didn't know, man. I didn't know. I lived in fear for a long time about like the outside world because I thought I was something important, knowing I'm an addict. The word, what's my kids going to hear? The word titty or something like that? My 8-year-old swears like a truck driver, man. He does. And what am I going to worry about? A little bit of that. You know what he said to me a couple weeks ago? And he knows when one of my friends is getting a key tag, we'll all go to the meeting. We'll go out after the meeting, before the meeting. And he goes, he knows it's clean time, anniversary. He's clapping, If he's at a clean time countdown, he's 8 years old. He'll stand up when they say 8 years. You know what I mean? And he said to me, when Ron was getting, no, it wasn't Ron. I forget who it was getting a key tag. Who was that a couple weeks ago? Somebody getting a key tag. It wasn't Ron, no. And he said, Dad, can I belong here? It's powerful for me, man. I didn't have that kind of connection with my dad. I didn't really know where my dad went when he went, but he went places. I don't know where he was at. But I know where he knows where I'm at, and he likes. He came to last week was my first night of my new home group. He showed up with us and set up. I had his mom come pick him up, about 10 minutes for the meeting. So he put out the key tags real carefully. And those were all blessings, and I've been with the same woman for, a little over 20 years. We've been married 16 years. That's crazy to me. I still feel like I'm trying to figure out how to be in a relationship, And, I've crossed a lot of lines, but, there's one line with her that I haven't crossed, and I hope I never do, man, because I don't know. I go out of town a lot for work. I get thoughts in my head. I listen to discussion meetings, y'all. About people talking about Tinder and this and that, and looking up stuff, and Craigslist, and I've seen things on TV. Maybe I should spice it up a little bit. I haven't just for today. Just for today, I haven't done that, and I'm just grateful to be clean. And Narcotics Anonymous works. I'm proud to be, among men in recovery. That I've watched over the years. Some of you I don't know. I just met you. Some of you have just gotten to know you in the last few months. I see my man Brandon back there. See you come to that meeting on Saturday mornings, smiling, clean. And that's what we do in the program, man. We get here, we get our life together, and our spirit comes to life, And we can do this thing just for a day, And too often these days we're saying goodbye to people, and too often for the wrong reasons, God rest him, you guys talked about earlier, my man Vernon passed away this week, and there was someone who really made me feel welcome when I got clean. I'm from out in the sticks, and I came into the big city. I'm going to meetings. I remember going down 951 Penn Avenue Recovery Center, meetings all day long. I remember getting involved in Start to Live early on, going with Nate and Curtis R. and and Cecil and these guys took me under their wing, man. They put me on a taping committee, gave me these big headphones to wear. We would tape the meetings. Not like now with all this high-tech stuff, you know. It was old school. And they made me feel welcome. And so I try to do that for people nowadays, you know. And I've tried. And honestly, the more people I have in my life that are coming back in or coming in for the first time, the richer my God, you know, rewards me. And I feel that connection because I don't know, man. It's just when I'm doing the right thing, that's the spot that I'm in, and I'm right there where that guy John was with me, you know, reaching out to me, helping me. And people did that. That's how we do. We pass it on to each other. And they say, man, be nice to the newcomer. They could be your sponsor one day, and that's true. You know, we've seen that happen over and over again in this program. But you know, thank you again for asking me, Phil. God bless everybody. And I'm an act. My name's Kevin.